Hey there, and thank you so much for joining me. My name is Brittany, and I am a homeschooling single mom to an only child. If you joined me in my last video, you will know that that one is about the 5 steps that you need to take in order to establish your homeschooling program for your students. What I wanted to do beginning in this video is create a series that goes into much more detail about each of those individual steps. We'll start with this video, which will be all about step 1, which is how to legally establish your program. Now, one thing that I want you to note is every single state has their own rules and procedures for establishing your homeschooling program. They all have different regulations. Home education is not mandated or regulated at the federal level, but at the state level. And again, because of this, each state is going to have their own requirements, what it is that you need to do, how you're going to maintain that program. And this video is going to talk specifically about how to legally establish your homeschooling program in the state of Florida. That is where we started homeschooling. That is where we are currently homeschooling. So I did want to put that caveat out there that this is going to be a very Florida specific video. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Just for some context, I wanted to let you know that home education is not something new. We have been homeschooling in the state of Florida. I think the initial statutes were passed in 1985. And since then, there has been an increase in the number of families across the state who are choosing to homeschool their children. The last stats that I was able to find come from the Department of Education in Florida in 2023. And those state that we currently have over 117,000 families across the state that are homeschooling and over 154,000 students who are homeschooling in throughout grades K or kindergarten through 12th grade. So again, the numbers just continue to grow. The amount of homeschoolers in the state continues to rise. And you may be one of those potential families who are thinking about establishing a homeschooling program for your students. And I just wanted to make sure that you understood the process, what to do and what not to do. So the first thing that you're going to need to do in order to establish your homeschooling program in Florida is if your student is currently enrolled in another school, whether it be a public school or a private school or a school in a different state, you will need to withdraw them from that school before you can register them as a homeschool student. And so what that will look like is you going to the school, to the registrar's office, and filling out and submitting the paperwork to officially withdraw them from the school. I know that this can be a very scary thing, a very daunting thing. It really is a big step in the process because you are literally like cutting ties with the public or private school system that your student has been enrolled in for at least a little amount of time. And so that withdrawal process really does make things official. And just so you know, when you do go through the process of withdrawing, you may get questions from the principal. You may need to meet with the principal, an assistant principal, the registrar. May get questions from those individuals wondering why you're choosing to withdraw your student, asking you, are you sure that this is something that you want to do? Maybe there are going to be people who literally in that moment try to kind of talk you out of it. And again, this is really because they don't know what you're doing. They don't understand what it is that you're doing when you're choosing to homeschool, because chances are they were not homeschooled. They are not homeschooling their children. They don't know any other kids who have been homeschooled. So for them, that is a natural reaction to kind of question your plans. Don't worry about it. You don't need to explain even to administrators and to the registrar why you are choosing to withdraw your student. You have a right to go ahead and do that But of course, you will need to actually register them as a homeschool student once they are withdrawn from their current school. One thing that you will want to do as you're going through with that withdrawal process, particularly if you have students who are in middle school or high school, is you are going to want to request any documents or records from the school. This is really going to be what you're going to use to really help you establish where your student is once you start your homeschooling program, what grade level they need to be in. That really is going to serve as your justification for how you begin your homeschooling journey. So, any testing that your student has completed, standardized testing, transcripts, report cards, progress reports, anything that you don't already have access to, attendance records, you're going to want to go ahead and request those from the school's registrar or whoever is in charge of that process, because you do want to have that documentation available to you. Remember, once you complete the withdrawal process, your student is not only no longer enrolled in that particular school, but your student will no longer be enrolled in the school system. So you will not be able to just log into whatever parent portal your district uses and look up grades, look up this and that. Your child won't be a student anymore. So you won't have access to that information in those records. So make sure that you request them as you're going through that withdrawal process. So that is step number one. Excuse me. And then what you are going to do once you withdraw your student from their current school is you are going to file a notice or letter of intent with your school district. So even though you are establishing a homeschool program, you will need to register that homeschool program or your intent to homeschool your student with your local school district. So remember, each state has statutes or laws in place that determine the requirements for homeschooling, and each individual county in the state of Florida is is going to be responsible for maintaining and tracking your students' progress in the homeschool program. So you will need to enroll them and register them with the homeschool office in your district. However, that does not mean that they are a student in that county. They do not have a school of record in this case. You're literally just registering them as a homeschool student. So, what you'll need to do is in Florida, we have 67 counties, and every county has their own school district. You will need to register your student with the school district in which you live. So, one of those 67 counties, each one will have a school district that those students attend. Each one should have a home education office, and that is who you are going to contact in order to file this notice of intent. And what you'll want to do is just go to that county's school district website. So maybe Orange County Public Schools, Dade County or Miami-Dade County Public Schools, Hillsborough Schools, Leon County, wherever it is that you're located. And then just search for home education. And there is a home education office that you will be your point of contact from this point forward. And what you'll notice is on that site, they will probably have a list of forms that you will use throughout the duration of your home education program. The very first one that you will need to concern yourself with at this point, again, is that notice or letter of intent. Each school district will have one. They all look a little bit different. They all ask different types of questions. You don't even need to use the form that is provided by the district. Some of them say this form is optional. So you just need to have something that you use as your notice or letter of intent that establishes your student as being enrolled in home education with the district. So if you don't want to use the one that is provided by the district, go ahead and do an internet search for notice of intent, home education Florida, something like that, in order to see a list of potential options, or you can create one on your own if you so choose. But you'll definitely want to go ahead and do that. And what you'll notice on the forms that are provided by the district and what you'll want to include on your form if you're creating it yourself, a couple of things. Outside of your students' information, name, some demographic information, name, birth date, address, your information, you're also going to want to include a home education start date or program start date. This is going to be the date that establishes the start date of your program. And so this becomes important not only because it is the first day that you will officially begin homeschooling your student, but it also becomes the date that the district is going to use to determine when your annual evaluation is due. So if your start date on your notice of intent is August 1st, that means that every August 1st thereafter, or by each August 1st thereafter, you will need to submit an annual evaluation because that is going to be due once a year. And again, the date that determines the due date for that annual evaluation is your home education program start date. So that is something that you'll want to make sure that you have on that form. It does not need to be the current date. It just needs to be the date that you plan to start educating your student at home. And basically that just means outside of public school, private school, or charter school. And the other thing that you are going to want to do is start gathering up some Florida residency paperwork just to prove that you live where it is that you say that you live. You won't necessarily need this to establish your student as a home education student in your district. However, if you plan on enrolling your student in any type of dual enrollment program, whether it be at the local middle school or high school, Florida virtual, or any virtual education program that is provided by your school district, you will actually need to prove that you are a resident of that district. And so what you'll want to do with that is you will want to gather up documents like your driver's license and then proof of residency, like maybe a voter registration card, a lease, a copy of your lease, or a copy of your deed where you are listed as someone who actually lives at that residence, utility bills, that kind of thing. Because again, even though you may not need those forms initially in order to file your notice of intent, if you do want your student to be involved in any extracurriculars or any courses that are offered in your district, they need to be able to prove that you live where you say that you live, and you are going to be limited to, or your student is going to be limited to enrolling in extracurriculars and academic courses at their home school. And that is going to be determined by your school district's boundaries, and that is why they need to know your address and basically what school your student would be zoned to if they were to be enrolled at that public school. One thing that I do want to point out to you is this notice of intent needs to be completed fairly quickly within you withdrawing your student from their current school. If you wait too late, your student will now become truant because once they withdraw from their current school, there's going to be a lapse until you fill out and submit that notice or letter of intent. That lapse counts towards your student being truant. And that is something that you do not want because, of course, you want your student to be in school. Being registered as a homeschool student will take care of that because at that point, they will be actually enrolled in school. All right, so those are the things that you'll need to do to register your student and establish a home education program. One thing that I do want you to note is that's really it. You don't need to prove anything else to anyone. You don't need to submit all of these different documents just to establish your home education program in the state of Florida. Here in Florida, our homeschool laws are the laws are set, but we do have a lot of flexibility in what we do and how we do it. Really, in Florida, when it comes to home education, we are talking about parent-driven education at its core. So you get to choose your curriculum, you get to choose what your student learns, when they learn it, as far as sequence goes, how they learn it. It really is up to you. So in the next video, we are going to talk about step 2 for establishing your home education program. Now that after this step, you will actually have your student enrolled as a home education student. The next step is going to be to choose your curriculum. So again, that next video is going to talk all about how to go about choosing your curriculum. What are your options, particularly if you have students who are in middle school and high school, because when you're homeschooling elementary age kids, it tends to be a lot easier if you want to teach them yourself. When they start going into those higher grades and they're taking that more advanced coursework, it can become a little bit more difficult to teach them yourself. So I do want to talk about your options when it comes to curriculum. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have anything that you want to add to this conversation, please go ahead and leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. Until next time, happy homeschooling.